واو الله اكبر الله اكبر.
انفجار نووي.
عندنا حريق كبير في مرفأ بيروت.
لا عطرة يا عطرة البناية يا عطرة. انفجار نووي.
صار في $100 هلا صار في $100 على
احمد علي كان عم بيلعب هون. It's okay baby. It's okay.
What? 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 Bro!
لا هيدا كثير هيدا. لا هلا اللي طلع كان خفيف الاول. فرقعات نارية.
واو
الله اكبر
الله اكبر.
انا هلا شوف اهي هي مسطر هي ايه اكيد صار في شيء منه طبيعي الان. طلع
عطرة. انفجار نووي.
كبير في مرفأ بيروت.
لا يا عذرا البناية يا عذرا. انفجار نووي.
صار في مقدارات هلا وين؟ صار في مقدار على الخطوط.
انا ما بعرف شو اللي صار، انا كنت عم بتصيد، سمعت في حريقه والعه، دورت بدي فل على بيتي وسمعت شيء فقع، وصار اللي صار، وصلت وما عاد عرفت شيء، هذا هو اللي بعد.
ما حصل اليوم لن يمر من دون حساب. سيدفع المسؤولون عن هذه الكارثة الثمن. هذا وعد للشهداء وللجرحى. هذا التزام وطني. ستكون هناك حقائق تعلن عن هذا المستودع الخطير الموجود منذ العام 2014.
Thousands of patients injured when this huge explosion rocked the Lebanese capital. And this map shows where it happened. It's just terrifying, isn't it, those pictures? Let's go live now to CNN senior correspondent Ben Wiedemann, who's in Beirut. And Ben, you were in the CNN bureau when this blast went off. What can you tell us?
Basically, Ali, it was like an earthquake. In fact, that's what I thought it was initially, because this is an earthquake zone, but just a millisecond afterwards, the windows were blown in, the window frames were blown inside the bureau, and I heard just smashing, shattering glass for sort of 360 degrees around me. And I looked out the window. There is a huge pall of red smoke floating overhead from the direction of the port, which is only about a kilometer, more or less, from this location. And I saw in all the buildings around us had suffered similar damage, but we were relatively lucky. There were some neighborhoods where buildings have collapsed. At this point, the Lebanese health minister is saying that at least 72 people were killed in this explosion that happened at about 5 minutes past 6 p.m. local time. More than 4,000 people wounded. The hospitals have been utterly overwhelmed by the injured. There have been calls for blood donations. As far as the cause of this blast, it's still unclear. Initially, the official news agency was reporting that it was caused by a warehouse in the port that contained fireworks. However, shortly afterwards, when the head of general security was able to actually go there, he said it was, in his words, naive to assume that that massive mushroom cloud was caused by mere fireworks. And in fact, he later said that in 2014, more than 2,000 tons of high explosives were confiscated and deposited in that warehouse. And now the question is, who was it confiscated from, and why was that highly dangerous material left simply sitting in the port? Now, Beirut has been declared a disaster zone, and the country is going to be in mourning as of tomorrow. But I think people are very much eager to get to the bottom of why this explosion occurred in Beirut this evening.
Well, when we're hearing that there are warnings about this warehouse, as you said, dating back 6 years, that the likely cause is ammonium nitrate. But we're hearing reports that the hospitals are too damaged to actually treat patients. Can you give us an idea, because we know that Beirut is a relatively small city, of just how big an area the devastation is?
It's the entire city. I've spoken with people to the west, to the east, and everyone is reporting that damage occurred to their homes. I spoke to one woman who lives in my neighborhood in the western part of the city, who said that she was here throughout the civil war, throughout the 2006 war between Israel and Lebanon, and in all that time she has never seen a blast as large and as destructive as the one that happened this evening. As far as the hospitals go, they're all damaged, but they're still doing their best to treat people. Sometimes they have to do it in the parking lot, just given the sheer number of people there. In fact, our producer, Ghazi Belkis, has just returned from one of those hospitals, and he said it was reminiscent of the worst days in Iraq during the war there. So definitely this is something that sort of the scale of which this city has never seen.
Ben, when we went to where this morning, we were hearing a death toll of about 20. As the morning's progressed, that's creeped up. It's now past 70. Do you have a better sense on the ground of just how many people have been killed, or what that figure might hit?
It's definitely going to go up as far as the fatalities as well as the casualties. And, you know, I can still hear in the distance ambulances wailing, and clearly they're still looking for the injured and the dead. So it's impossible to say at this point, given that the authorities are overwhelmed, the hospitals are overwhelmed, but I think it's unfortunately, you can take it for granted that these numbers are only going to continue to increase in the coming hours.
Well, I mean, Ben, you're doing a brilliant job reporting there today, but this is also the city where you live, and just talking to you now, you seem quite shaken by what's just occurred.
Yes, I mean, I was here during the Civil War. I was here during the 2006 war between Lebanon and Israel. I've covered wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya. I'll go down the list. And but this explosion was something I've never seen before either. Lebanon is a country that was already suffering from an economic collapse, grappling with the coronavirus outbreak. Here, for instance, the local currency has lost 80% of its value against the dollar. People are expecting more than 50% of the population as a result of that economic collapse to fall below the poverty line. For the last 3 months, every month, prices have increased by 50%. Ordinary people were already having a hard time getting by. Increasingly, you see people rummaging through rubbish tips looking for food or something that they can sell. Now, this disaster on top of all this country's other catastrophes is heartbreaking.
Yeah, look, and as you said, Lebanon is on the brink of financial collapse. The last thing you needed. Ben, our thoughts are with you and everyone in Lebanon right now. Thanks for joining us. Carl.
Said it all, didn't he? Well, Prime Minister Scott Morrison joins us now from Canberra. PM, good morning to you. First up to that explosion in Lebanon, terrible situation. We know there are many Australians who live there and many more here who have relatives there.
That's true. There's about 20,000 Australians at any one time who are in Lebanon, Carl, and it's my deep regret to inform you that one Australian has been killed in this horrific blast. We obviously can't confirm details of that at this stage because there's contacts with families and others, but our hearts go out to all of those in Lebanon and in Beirut in particular at the moment. You can see from the image of the blast, it is just absolutely devastating. But beyond that, as we know, there are hundreds of thousands of Australians who have Lebanese descent, and they'll be concerned about family members. We provided the number to you that I hope is on the screen now that people can call if they are worried about family members. And I can say, though, please be patient. Our embassy in Beirut has been impacted significantly, but I can report all our staff there are okay. Some cuts and some scratches and these sorts of things, but they'll be seeking. I know that people will be sleeping there to ensure that the facility is not compromised. So they're doing a great job there, and they'll be doing all they can. But our hearts really go out to our Lebanese Australian community. I know there'll be many prayers in the Maronite churches and the mosques in Australia. But again, given the COVID restrictions, I would just urge the appropriate response. Those private prayers this morning, I think, will be the ones that people will be offering, and so will I.
Well said, PM. That's the number there for loved ones to reach out to the Department of Foreign Affairs. Just below me on your screen, 0262613305. That's the number there. But one Australian, as confirmed by the Prime Minister, has been confirmed as dying from that explosion. Terrible news.
Beirut, Lebanon awoke to scenes of utter devastation this morning after two colossal explosions devastated parts of this country's capital. They happened at a warehouse where nearly 3,000 tons of highly explosive ammonium nitrate were being stored, apparently without any safety measures. At least 100 people were killed, some 4,000 injured, that according to the Red Cross. We're getting these live images right now from Beirut, where smoke continues to billow over the blast site. The explosions shattered windows as far as 20 kilometers away. Rescue workers are continuing to look for survivors beneath the rubble there. It is unclear how many people are missing at this hour.
A devastating blast, followed by billows of smoke, visible from all across the city. The massive explosion rocked Beirut on Tuesday evening, flattening the city's port area, with buildings destroyed and people trapped under the rubble. Ambulances raced to and from the area, transporting the injured to hospitals. We were at home. We heard what sounded like fireworks. We thought it was a container in the port that was on fire, and they weren't able to put it out. A few seconds later, we were flying through the air. We heard the first explosion, We went to see what happened. I didn't have time. I didn't realize there would be a second explosion. The glass exploded in front of me. The blast destroyed buildings not only at the port where it originated, but across much of Beirut, even kilometers away from the epicenter. Shop windows were smashed, walls and doors of people's homes knocked down. The Prime Minister said those responsible will be brought to justice. It will not pass without accountability. Those responsible for this catastrophe will pay the price. This is a promise to the martyrs and the injured. This is a national commitment. The blast hit a country already struggling with the coronavirus pandemic and a deep economic crisis. Hospitals, already burdened with COVID-19 patients, are overwhelmed. Countries, including longtime rival Israel, have offered humanitarian aid to Lebanon. Support is sorely needed to help the country deal with this enormous catastrophe.
We're joined now by our correspondent, Razan Salman, in Beirut. A very difficult morning where you are, Razan. Can you describe for us your experience of what happened last night?
Indeed, Brian, this was really a catastrophe. When the explosion took place, I was at my own house. My house is like at least 10 kilometers away from the location of the explosion. All the glass in all the fronts in my house were all exploded. I have no fronts in my house anymore. I thought the explosion was right under my building. And then when I went to the location of the explosion, when I was on the way, I saw the ambulances. They were picking casualties from areas that are very far from the location of the explosion. The smoke was all around Beirut. You could see the smoke from any area you are in Beirut. There was a total state of chaos and panic. People were panicking. At first, nobody knew what happened. And then when the news started coming, people understood. But it was because their homes were already destroyed, even if they were very far from the place of the explosion. The glass was covering most of Beirut streets. The storefronts in all of downtown Beirut are all now on the streets. And this comes at a very hard time for Lebanon, where Lebanon is already suffering from a very difficult economic crisis. And also, when I was on the way, people were asking if they could put casualties in my own car. But luckily, there were many ambulances that were already picking people. And this morning, hospitals are packed. There are at least 78 dead or 100 dead, according to the Red Cross, and at least 4,000 injured people. So there is no more space in the hospital to welcome the people who are injured. And yeah.
Razan, a very difficult situation you're describing there. We've been seeing scenes of mountains of rubble around the blast site and farther away as well. Is there any idea how many people are trapped right now beneath the rubble that need help, that need rescuers to get to them?
We have no idea how many people need help under the rubble. The rescuers are still digging under the rubble, and there are helicopters that are searching for people who were thrown away to the sea because of the massive blast, the massive explosion. So rescuers are still working. They're still looking for people. I am in an area that is very near to one of the most renowned hospitals in Beirut. The ambulances were coming in and out. And there was a total state of panic and chaos till now, because they cannot even count the number of injured, or there are also people who are still lost, and nobody knows what happened to them. They are still looking for people who are lost.
Does Beirut, does Lebanon have the capacity to get to all of these people and to treat them medically?
Lebanon, after all the coronavirus outbreak, and Lebanon was already in state of panic because of this pandemic, and then the explosion came out. It came out at a very bad time. So rescuers and the hospitals, they announced, the Minister of Health, he announced that the hospitals have no more capacity to welcome the patients, the injured people, and they are treating the injured people in the corridors of the hospitals since rooms are already packed.
Razan, we have
outside Beirut.
Time for one more question, Razan. Why was this ammonium nitrate stored so close to the city center, so much of it, 3,000 tons, right there in the port area, and who was responsible for that? Do you have any idea?
There is the Prime Minister, when in his statement he said he will not preempt any assumption because and they will investigate to see who is responsible for this. The tons, the almost 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate were there since 2014, and they were stored without measures, according to the president of Lebanon, Michel Aoun, in a statement he said yesterday during the meeting of the High Council of Defense.
Razan Salman in Beirut. We'll have much more from the Lebanese capital as the day progresses, of course. Thanks so very much for now, Razan, and all the best to you there in Beirut. Let's get more now with Joachim Paul. He heads the Beirut branch of the Heinrich Böll Foundation. That is a German think tank. Thanks so much for joining us today. A very difficult time. Are you, your colleagues, their families okay?
Yes, thank you. A very difficult time indeed, but we're okay. Our department and office is destroyed, but we are okay. Who is not okay are all those people out there who suffered injuries, those thousands, and the Lebanese people who had to endure for months and months such a hardship and crisis.
From the COVID pandemic you're referring to there, I imagine, Joachim, these explosions come as Beirut, Lebanon, is in the midst of a social and political crisis, a number of crises. What needs to happen right now to get the country and its people through this shock?
Yes, Lebanon is in not one crisis. It's in the midst of multiple crises. You mentioned the Corona crisis. Corona came after millions of Lebanese protested against their government, not only the government, against the complete political system, which is totally corrupt and which is not ready to start any reform and to open up the system, which is exactly the problem. Then the financial crisis hit. 50% of assets the country were destroyed. A massive amount of people were pushed under the poverty line. Then came Corona, several month long lockdown. Now a surge in numbers of Corona infection, and then this incredible. Sorry, yes, please.
Yeah, if the current elite, the business and political elite, is incapable of dealing with the Corona crisis and now this crisis, who can help the country move forward?
The demands of the democracy movement were from the start, from the 17th of October, for the government to step down and to allow a government of experts, of independents who do not belong or do not represent the traditional political elite or political parties, to take over with a limited mandate, the mandate to steer the country through the economic crisis. And this did not happen. The now government negotiated with the International Monetary Fund and other international donors, knowing that international aid and international financial support is the only way out of the acute, massive crisis the country is in. Nothing happened.
Yeah, it is an acute crisis. And right now there's a new one. We're looking at the port. Lebanon's imports. Millions of Lebanese depend on food, for example, passing through that port. Do we still have the connection? It looks like. We're going to wait for a second.
Hello?
Okay, we have the connection back. Yes, we can hear you again. Thanks so much, Joachim. I'm going to restate the question. This port is essential to get goods to the people, not only of the capital, but the rest of Lebanon. What needs to happen right now for the port itself so that it can get up and functioning, so that supplies can get to the people of Lebanon?
Exactly. There need to be immediate, probably humanitarian operations to get the port running again. We should not forget the country depends to 85% of all the goods, whatever it is being consumed, including food supplies, medicine, etc., 85% imports. Now, the country didn't have the money to import. There's already a severe nutrition crisis. And this is, I would say, this and medical supplies, the most urgent to come in. But including other things, all windows in Beirut are scattered and destroyed. There is not one factory that produces glass in the country, for example. All of this need to be channeled through the now destroyed port.
Okay,
a huge task.
A huge task for the nation to rebuild, certainly after this. I'm sure the focus is right now on rescuing people beneath the rubble. We're going to have to leave it there. Joachim Paul from the Heinrich Böll Foundation, thank you so very much, and all the best to you in Beirut.